Hello, guys, and welcome to Stacking Wisdom Podcast. My name is Artem. It's my brother Alex, the co-host. And today we're joined with Matt. Matt was the one that created this piece for us right here, and he's also involved in a lot of other businesses too. So we thought it'd be really cool to invite him over and have him speak about this and his art and what else he does in terms of business and what other kind of ventures he's been involved in. So I'll give the platform.
Okay, thanks. Where do you want me to start? Right?
I don't know. Maybe let's start off with this because it seems like the most appropriate, right? Because
Okay.
that's like a conversation,
Yep.
piece. So what inspired you to do moose? Why the moose?
I wanted something Canadian but a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I started this business about 4 years ago. A barn at my home farm where I grew up had fallen down a while ago, and my sister now lives there with her husband, and I was there helping her clean up some of the wood, and we were making a pile and burning some stuff, and I thought, well, maybe I could make something out of some of this. So I took some pieces home and just kind of played around. I've always had a little workshop at home where I can do stuff in, and I made some Canadian flags, and somebody said, oh, well, where'd you get that? And I told them I made it, and the next thing you know, I'm selling a few of them here or there, and then my eldest daughter's been helping me with some designs, and she said, should do some different things. So put a moose on one, and then now we have the red, white, and moose. That's kind of our
So that was
mascot.
the first original.
The first original piece was the moose
that's
on
awesome.
them. Yeah, and there's a few different sizes we do. This is all painted on reclaimed barn wood, and it's painted by hand, and I actually use outdoor barn paint on it so that you can hang it outside if you want. And that was 4 years ago, and now this is one of the more popular ones. The Canadian flag is the most popular, just with the maple leaf on it.
Sure.
But we also do them in a just white, and instead of the red on there, and that's a little different too. And it's a real Canadian folk artsy kind of movement. There's a lot of people looking for rustic kind of things to hang in their gardens and their cottages. And
I've noticed that there's a lot of kind of woodworking that's coming back into sort of like a trend, right? With a lot of clocks and a lot of just a lot of pieces that are made, like handmade, like tables and stuff like that. But they do like some really incredible work. Did you ever know like you had like some artistic side to you, or was this something like that you always kind of had with you, or like
in high school I was always into art. I almost went to college for art, but my dad talked me out of it because he thought there wouldn't be any money in it. So
fair enough.
it just happens that I was thinking of going into animation, and everybody who graduated when I would have went down and worked for Disney, so that would have been kind of neat. I would have been golfing instead of talking to you guys today. But I've always just kind of liked it, and I always had a sketchbook, and I'm just kind of doing stuff, but never had time because I was busy with other things. And this gives me time to do this, and every piece is unique, so it's kind of neat to be able to do that and share it with everybody too.
That's awesome.
And
Can you tell our audience just about some other designs that you came up with?
Okay, so the year that I started this and went to a lot, I say we, my eldest daughter Leah goes with me because she likes to help me with this sort of thing. On weekends in the summer especially, we'll do a bunch of craft shows and festivals, and in Canada's Sesquicentennial was the first year we really pushed into that, so that was 2 years ago. And so Canadian, everybody bought everything Canadian, so that was great. But since then, and even at the time, people want things that are more personalized, so I might do one that might have their cottage name on it, or family name, or just their name written on some barn board and painted on. I've done great big 3x6 world maps on barn board to hang up like a headboard behind your bed, or just as a feature piece. I also make coat racks using railway spikes for coat hooks and old barn beams, mantles for barn beams. I've made tables from barn doors and from planks and barns, just anything rustic like that.
And so if it's not personalized, like where do you draw inspiration for this stuff? Like, I mean, like, do you just try to go with something that you think is gonna sell, or is it just based off of love for something? Like where do you get the inspiration?
The bigger things, I have a sample table that I take to all my shows, and we just work off of that. It's our workspace, but it's also, this is a sample of what I can build for you. A lot of times people want something that's their own idea, and I'll say, okay, well, if you've got a picture that you've got in mind, if you've seen it somewhere, if you've seen it online, just send me the picture and I'll see if we can work with it. The custom barn door tables, I've made probably a couple dozen of those, and I've got a selection of barn doors at home, and somebody says, hey, we're looking for a coffee table kind of unique about this size. We'll just go look at the doors I have and see what will work, and yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And we'll post all the links, everything in our video too that talks about this, in more details.
The latest thing I've got is a series of tavern signs that I'm doing. So I've made up some beer logos.
Nice.
And so, there's a largemouth lager There's one that's a moonshine kind of thing. There's some wine ones, and they're all rustic and they're unique because everyone's hand painted, but they're just a little different than the other. So
that's so cool.
Those will be our next thing to have this summer.
So is this something fun, or is this more like to sell to other businesses, or like what is this? What's the purpose behind it?
I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun, and it didn't make money, right?
Obviously,
but when I sell through, I have some some retail stores that I sell through, some on consignment, and some I just sell straight up to, and we have to kind of standardize what they sell because I can't have 100 different products going in different directions to them. So I standardize. Some of them will sell the moose flags and the Canadian flags and the coat racks, and if they want something custom, then we price it appropriately. And there's a couple of stores that have things I make just for their store, so that line of products goes right to them. And then I've got my website. I have that people can order off of, but they can get my email address, see what I've got there, and contact me, and I'll make stuff for them. So
that's awesome. And then how far do you usually go, like in terms of like the shows?
Sticking to Ontario for shows because travel's a little far to go.
I was gonna say, but you're involved in other stuff too, right? So,
but we're trying to geographically spread ourselves out. So we'll do some in the Niagara area, some to the north a little bit, and some in southwestern Ontario as well, just so that we're spread out generally.
Yeah, I was gonna say because Ontario is so huge, right? I mean, there's so much more land, up north. That's
right.
Most people in southern Ontario don't even realize about probably half the time, right?
That's right. Yeah. But
Ontario is a huge province. It really is.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the craft shows is 10 years ago, you could probably barely find one to go to a month. And now, every weekend, you could go to 2 or 3 within an hour's driving distance because everybody wants to have one and seems to have one. It's the thing to do, get out and walk around, get some fresh air, and see all these artisans that are out there, right? And some of them get thousands of people to them, and they're just great. So, we've got about 15 lined up between now and September to go to, so about every other weekend starting in May. Some inside, some outside, and we're getting better at picking the better ones to go to too. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I noticed you're wearing a real estate cap there, so you're obviously involved in that too, right? So tell us more about that.
Approximately 10 years ago, I started in that and been working for Royal LePage Realty in Brantford, and it's great business to be in. You can be as busy as you want, and it works well with what I do because it's not something I think I could do full-time all the time, all year round and be consistent. I have other things going on, and they understand that there. My broker's a good guy, and I'm the rural guy in the office. I've always grown up on a farm, so if they got any questions, I help them with that, and I've sold things in the city and in the country and whatever. Had some good years doing it and plan to keep doing it again.
Well, you probably just have like a lot of really good experience working in the country too, just because you're familiar with it, right? So that probably gives you an advantage.
Yep.
And somebody just coming in from like a city or a town, right?
Yep. And I've always liked construction and buildings, and we've renovated some homes too. So it's nice to have that knowledge when you're going into that, and you can help people out with those kind of things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And tell us more about like what's going on with the real estate like in rural areas, like because I know like in the big metropolitan cities it's going like very high end. Like, is it sort of catching on too, or how different is it? How diverse is it?
Well, the market in Brantford right now is it's quite good. Right. It's still affordable, but it is higher than it has been the past few years. It's been increasing, and the way I explain it to people out there when they contact me for information is, I'm guessing about 4 or 5 years ago, somebody in Toronto sold their house for more than it should have gone for, and a bunch that happened as the market value increased. Their housing prices went up. Those people sold, they moved to Oakville. Those people sold, they moved to Burlington. Those people sold, and everybody came with a little more money than they started with, and it rippled out to Hamilton and Ancaster and out to Brantford, and we're seeing that ripple a few years later. We've been riding it, but it's starting to level off a bit, and when you get out farther towards past Woodstock, it's starting to level out, and you don't see as big a wave, but we have seen some very good increases out that way. And although it's still a very affordable place to live, there's great growth in Brantford and in Paris right now, and it's still within driving distance of the city if people need to drive into here to work. So we're seeing some.
It sure is. I came to pick up that piece from you.
There you go. Perfect.
It's actually true what you're saying, because I know my mom. She had a place in Oakville too, and then she decided to move on to like Waterdown, like towards Hamilton that way. And we've seen that. We've noticed that with a lot of our neighbors too. They buy a place, they stay there maybe 6, 7 years, and they move on to like Hamilton and then further away.
That's
like
right.
Ancaster, like all those other cities too, right? So it is sort of a trend. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah. And it is still increasing slowly, but it's not like it was 2 or 3 years ago where it was just ridiculous. Yeah.
Fair enough.
It was really insane. It caught everybody off guard, I think. But yeah.
So what's the third business that you're involved in too?
So the other business I have has been 25 years now. It's a retail management company, and we do seasonal retail in malls across Ontario.
Right.
And that started because a friend of mine was involved in a business that he had just started, and he needed someone at a location, and he asked me if I knew anybody in the Brampton area. And I said, well, I'm not too busy this time of year. At the time I was farming, and it was winter time. It is. But I had friends there, and I was able to spend some time there and stay overnight, and I hired some staff to help me out. And the business, that business at the time was called Calendar Club. So Calendar Club of Canada right now is the company we're still involved with after 25 years. And there are, I think, 170 or 80 locations across the country now for that company. And I look after a dozen of them in actually sort of the southern Ontario and up to Barrie area.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah,
so it's really like spread out in southern Ontario.
Yeah. So in the malls, we'll go in at, typically in October, we will go in, set up a kiosk or a store, sell calendars, games, and toys, and get out in January. Occasionally we'll have a store that's open non-seasonally. We don't say permanently, we say non-seasonally, so through the summertime, and we'll still sell games and toys and some calendars in them as well. And the model is a consignment operator model, and that's the way that my business has worked for that one. And we're paid a commission based on sales, and we don't own the product or the fixtures in this case, but we're responsible for them. So things that aren't there when they're supposed to be are our responsibility. But we do have to cover the staffing, and that's always the biggest issue.
Yeah.
We go from 0 in September to 100 employees 3 weeks later. So it's a big deal.
Must be a little crazy.
Yeah, that's probably the most
Managing
stressful
and
part.
everybody, taking care of.
We've been very lucky that the past 3 or 4 years we haven't had to hire any new managers for any locations.
Really?
So that's a big deal because the manager can help coach and teach and train everybody.
Well,
right?
if they've had the experience, I mean, it's a no-brainer, right? So to have them do that.
Yeah. So that same company that I have has also done quite a few other retail ventures. We've done some kitchen concepts for Christmas time. We've done a Halloween concept as well, where you have a 10,000 square foot store selling costumes and things for about 8 weeks.
Nice.
We helped launch Virgin Mobile in Canada, and that was a 3-year project until Bell bought them out. And that was probably even more stressful than anything because it was such a changing business when they first started. Every week something was different, and employees have to be very well trained and knowledgeable because as the industry grows, they have to be right on top of everything too.
So with the Virgin Mobile, like they essentially didn't have their own employees. It's
That's right.
as though they outsourced it.
Yes, they started out and opened a few stores as corporate stores and had a staffing company manage them.
Sure.
And then when they decided to grow, they needed a partner to grow with. So they approached the people that have the Calendar Club and said, well, we've got operators all across the country already in the malls with staff, so it'd be a good way to start.
So it made sense.
And it made me start that way. So that was a real learning curve on our part too, because the most ambitious thing I think I've done is the Virgin was just so far out of the norm for us because it was a year-round thing, and but we knew it was going to be short-term because Richard Branson's model is build something that is, somebody else is charging too much for, and then sell out to them after a few years after you get it going. That's kind of the way his thing goes. So we knew the end was near, but it was good for 3 years.
Well, it's good that you studied up on him because you obviously knew exactly what was going to happen with it, right? So at least you kind of had the expectation.
Yeah.
So how did you end up getting into these businesses? Like you were obviously working for somebody else before, or doing something along those lines, right? I mean, like how does one go into managing such I don't want to say random, but like such different businesses.
Right. None of them tie. They don't tie together very easily.
They really don't. It doesn't seem like it would.
How do you find the time to balance running each one?
Well, that's the thing is people will say, "Oh, so you have 3 part-time jobs?" Well, some days I have 3 full-time jobs, all in one day. And you have to be confident and able to manage your time and not overpromise yourself and overcommit in some situations. Real estate, especially, is you're very committed when somebody asks you to help sell their house or whatever. I have a very good team of people I work with at my office in Brantford, and any of the other realtors at Royal Page will help each other out in our office. So if I need somebody to cover an open house while I'm not there one day, that's great. But we all have phones, right? And my phone it's my lifeline for everything. And there's so much you can do digitally right now, although a lot of it is face-to-face and person-to-person.
Sure.
I always explain to my clients that I do some other things too. I have other businesses, but they're number one when I'm sitting down with them, and we make sure that happens. But I mean, for anybody who's trying to start out on something else, I might have done it a little differently because I wasn't working for a company or somebody else and then did something on the side until I got my feet under me and then left. I was already doing something on my own. I was farming at the time with the family, and then we took on some of the calendar club things. And when that grew to a certain point, we decided we need to make a decision, and so we got out of the farm and just did that.
Right.
Expanded it because we had a year-round Christmas store in Stratford for about 5 or 6 years, which is a touristy kind of thing.
No, for sure.
So that was neat. And then at the same time, then Virgin Malba came along, so we started doing that. And this happened kind of randomly, kind of surprised me, but it's fun, so I like doing it. But I think for people who are looking for another business to get into or something to get into, and they're unsure, I think a lot of people think entrepreneurs are crazy and impulsive, and they just kind of throw everything out there. And I'm more calculated in planning than that. I won't always be the first there. And one of my favorite expressions is, the early bird may often get the worm, but the second mouse always gets the cheese. So I would rather be the second mouse to the trap than eat worms. So I'm always careful about that sort of thing, and I test it out. And sure, there's big rewards sometimes if you throw everything in, but there's also big failure possible too, right? And so I'm pretty steady in the middle. I don't like the extremes. Yeah.
I like your strategic approach, and the fact that you obviously look into businesses more than just, for what it, just the way it looks, right? I mean, obviously, like even with the Virgin Mobile, you researched it and you kind of knew where it was going to go,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
As far as the businesses go, I mean, like, I especially with like real estate, I can only imagine that you're probably just like some days you'd have to commit a lot more into the real estate as well, right? So
That's right.
and I mean, it probably helps, and that's one of the things that I probably think that a lot of people don't realize is that sometimes you kind of have to have the ability to let go of things and like delegate them, right? And sort of put your trust into other people, because I think that a lot of the times a lot of entrepreneurs they're very controlling, and they're very sort of hesitant to let go of that control, right? So one of the things that I've noticed is that it's just better just to kind of put that trust into people, and when you do, they want to like deliver for you. They want to get those good results because they want to gain that recognition. It doesn't necessarily even have to always translate into like financial gratification, right? So it's more of just them actually going out and actually doing something that they feel like they're a part of, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's right.
yeah. So as far as you being in business, how long have you been in business together then, I guess, with the different,
So the retail business I've got is 25 years this year is the longest.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So, and before that was probably 4 or 5 years since I worked with somebody or for somebody directly.
Right.
So I haven't had a boss in quite a while.
Well, isn't it true to some extent though, like that your customers sort of become like your boss a little bit too?
Yes.
Especially like with the real estate.
Yeah,
too,
it's
right?
a total service business,
Yeah,
right? And that's what I tell people. I give them my opinion of what their house should sell for in the market today. And of course, most people think it's always a little higher. And I say, well, I'm working for you, but we have to have a plan in case your plan doesn't work,
Yeah,
right?
of course.
So you always have to have a plan B and C and D, because it doesn't always work the way you want it to.
The alphabet plan, right?
The whole alphabet plan, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and another way that the businesses all are tied together is that whenever I contemplate something else, I think of, well, what tools have I already got that I can share that I'm not making complete use of? I mean, if you're any entrepreneur, anybody who's starting a business for themselves, they've got a phone. Well, there's one more thing. You can use that same phone for more than one thing. You've got a computer, you maybe have a home office. I've got tools, I've got a trailer that I pull with my truck, so I'm not using it every day. Maybe that's something I use when I do some of this, because I can go and collect barn board and that sort of thing, and I already had it for my other business. So people don't realize that if they can share those things amongst them all, then that really lowers your overhead when you can do that sort of thing, right? And time is the biggest one. People think they don't have any time. Well, if you work 35 or 40 hours a week, I tell you, there's a lot of time left in the week.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
It's just that I think that they're just not in that mindset where they just tell themselves, I need to keep going. I need to dedicate myself to this. I need to take care of that.
Yeah.
It's more just like, well, I worked hard enough. I can take a break now, right? And it becomes like a 7 or 8 hour break, and then you sit there, watch TV, or you just consume, right? So
Well, last week I was on a golf trip in the States with some buddies of mine who are all in similar businesses, who I know from all these businesses that we've worked in the past, and we went during the week because that's when we can go. And we all joked that, okay, time to go back to work. It's tomorrow's Saturday, sort of thing. And that's that's the way it is. And one guy had his computer down there and spent some time doing some of his accounting work, and
Nice.
and that's just the way it is. And we always joke that an entrepreneur is somebody who gives up their 40-hour-a-week job to work 80 hours a week. It isn't always like that, but sometimes it is. Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
How do you find balance with like life and like a family and like whatever else? I mean, because there's obviously sometimes that you got to dedicate to that too, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Stuff gets in the way occasionally too with family, of course.
Well, in my case, our girls have all grown up with me doing this, and I was worried when they went out and got jobs, of seeing that when they had a school trip, I could take a weekday off and go to school trip, no problem. Or when it was time for vacation, we just kind of planned it and went. And now they've got jobs where they have to book their holidays and that sort of thing. But they seem to have adjusted quite well to it. In fact, two of them both have done stuff on the side already as well to their real careers, which is great. But
so
yeah,
you've inspired them in a sense too, right?
Maybe, I think so, yeah. And I mean, Leah works quite a bit with me on this, and the others have helped out as well too. So that's good.
Maybe one day she can take over with this, right?
You never know. You never know.
Well, Dad goes on a permanent golf trip, right?
Maybe, yeah, it might be. I don't think she's gonna let that happen. No. But I mean, even like we use some technology and website and design and stuff like that my daughter does, and I'd rather be out there doing this than sitting in on the computer doing some sort of things. Although I should probably learn a little more about it than I do. But the balance thing, it's you just make sure you can make the best time of when you have the time, right? And that everybody understands that that's the way it works. And you make work fun too, and get people involved in it. If your family's involved in it, sometimes that's good as well. So, yeah.
Did you have any mentors along the way that could kind of help to guide you, with the business?
I always say that the boss I had that taught me the most, his name was Morley Eilert, and he was a dairy farmer when I was growing up in St. George, Ontario. And I worked for him for a few summers through university and in high school. And his work ethic was, let's just get the job done. We spent long hours, but it was never too tough that you wanted to give up. But it was sometimes fun, and you're always learning something, and he always had something. He appreciated having help. He wasn't a rotten boss, and he was just a good guy to work for. And I grew up on a farm at home, and my dad was a teacher, and we had a hobby farm. I call it a hobby farm. He might have thought it was more full time because he spent a lot more time working, but it was an apple orchard, so in the summer he had time to do that too. And growing up on the farm at home too, the deal was you work in the morning, in the afternoon you can go fishing or whatever, right? So there was a bit more balance there too. But my dad was a hard worker, and there you go. He had more than one job too, right? His dream was always to be on a farm, and he was a teacher, and my mom was a teacher before she had kids too. So it was a great growing up, because being in rural Ontario, we had ponies. We rode them around on the farm and rode our bikes to town or to play sports or whatever like that too. So it was completely different. It was completely different than growing up in this city. Yeah. And I have an older brother and 3 younger sisters, and my youngest sister is still on the farm, so that's kind of neat. Get to go back there and visit. Yeah.
Do you feel like maybe your parents sort of encouraged a lot of the education onto you as well, to be sort of learn things, to read books, whatever it might be?
I was never a reader.
I
was not the best scholar in our family. My brother was way ahead of me on that line. Okay. So, but getting through the University of Guelph, I took a more practical approach to the education there and into farming, and used some of that when I got out. And then, but I was always outside as a kid, or sports or something like that, and I think that's just important as the education part of it too,
No, to stay physical, of course. I think it can play a really big role, and I think it builds up a lot of character, especially if you're involved with teams or team sports and stuff like that too, right? So it can definitely resonate into business a lot.
And that's the other thing that this allows me to do, when you can kind of choose your own schedule. I mean, I'm a member of the Optimist Club in our town, and I like to give back doing that, running programs with them. And
so tell me more about that.
So the Optimist Club's motto is Friend of Youth. And in the town of Brantford that I live in, our club, I've been a member since the year 2000, and we raise money and put on programs for kids in the community. So we'll have an Easter egg hunt. We have a breakfast with Santa. We sponsor almost every sports program in the community you can think of, and we have some bursaries for kids going to college for things and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of fun. We get a lot of guys in the club who have been doing it a long time, and
it's fantastic to give back to the community. I think that a lot more people should get involved with that, because I think you can make so much more connections too, and you can make
That's
a lot,
right too.
You can meet a lot of people, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
and especially for you, somebody like that's involved in real estate, it's probably very beneficial.
Yeah,
to
in a small
to
town
participate,
especially, you know, you get your names in the paper regularly for that sort of thing, and I don't think that a lot of people in my community know that I do this.
Really?
So this year I'm going to have an open house, like a workshop open house, and have people in to see what's going on.
That's awesome. We'd love to promote the open house for you.
Yeah, I'll give you the
What
dates.
are you planning on doing? Sometimes in the summer?
It'll be in sometime in May, so I'll get you
Okay.
the information when we get it figured out. But yeah,
What are you going to do at the workshop? Like, what's the agenda? What are you gonna do?
I just want to have my stuff out so everybody can see
Sure.
see what's going on, and and I've got a lot of extra things at home I want to get rid of, so I'm going to have a garage sale the same
Fair
day.
enough.
But
So it's kind of like half garage sale, half the art thing.
that's
right.
right. There's a hidden agenda there, but
Not
any-
really, but
that's right.
it's all art too. It's all.
It's an old saw. It'll be fine. Yeah.
I painted it myself when I was 11.
Yeah. But I just want, it'd be nice to just have the stuff out so people can see what's going on. And then, like you said, another reason to be in touch with everybody in the community. Yeah. When our kids played soccer, I coached soccer for about 15 years and was president of the organization for a while too. And that was just recreational within our community and a couple neighboring communities. It wasn't on a very high level, but it's good to be with the kids and see them grow and do all kinds of perform. So.
Well, it's funny because I'm sure you run into a lot of them, like as they're growing up, right? I mean,
Yep. There's a
they probably
couple
remember you,
that have needed houses, right? When they get to the right age. So
Beautiful.
there you go. Yep, that's right.
So tell me more about the actually working with wood, because I know, like, with a lot of masters, a lot of people that are involved in it, they kind of, they're very, it's a like very like intimate thing almost, right? Because it's working with a piece of wood. It's like I don't really even know how to describe it, because I know my mom, she used to make some documentaries and stuff back in the day, and one of the things she's done was she worked with somebody who used to create mirrors.
Okay.
And it was a very like complex process, but there was a lot of chemicals and whatnot that are involved in it too, and but it was very kind of, it's almost like you see your own reflection in those things, right? So it's like you're you're creating life almost to some extent.
Yep.
But it's like it's a little bit different because you're repurposing older wood, right? It's kind of was gonna either go into a fire or into a scrapyard, or probably not even gonna have a second life. So how do you? I mean, obviously you had the access to that old barn house that sort of fell apart to utilize that wood, but do you like obviously since then you've had to go out and outsource for additional stuff, and like how do you tell us more about the process and
Okay.
because I mean I'm sure there's a lot more to it than just taking a bunch of boards and just painting them, and because I mean you gotta have some sort of a motivation and drive to make 20 or 30 copies of this, and I know every single one of them is unique, right?
Yeah.
Every single one of them has a different wooden pattern, right?
So if you look at the wood in this, it's full of nail holes and knot holes, and that's why every piece is different. This was actually made using wood from the roof of a barn. So there are a lot of nails in it because over the 100 years that barn was around, when they changed the roof, they don't pull all the old nails out necessarily. Sometimes they're still stuck in. I pull most of the nails out of the wood that I get. I source my materials from a couple of guys that I know who their business is taking old barns and old buildings apart.
Okay.
And the type of wood that I always pick the best pieces that are most character. You can even tell in this one, at the top there where the wood's all worn away, there's probably a leak in the roof there, and it started to eat the wood away.
Yeah, I've been the more time I've been spending in this room here, the more I end up looking at this piece, and every single time I look at it, it looks completely different. It's funny that way.
And so basically with this type I make 3 different sizes. This is the medium size. There's one that's a little bigger. It's about 48 inches across, and there's a smaller one because not everybody has room for something this size. But I do need to, that's the marketing end of me, need to standardize it so that I can have maybe 3 price points instead of 10 price points within the same range, right? Yeah. I also don't like to cut the wood laterally like this because, or long like this, because I like to see those old edges in here too, right? And leave a little space in them. There's some other products I have that they're more square, like the bar signs, the tavern signs, they're more square, 23 by 23. So I have to use a different kind of wood for that. That's not as rough, or sand it some more, that sort of thing. But basically now when I get a piece of wood, I'll go through the process. One of the fellows will call me, say, we got a barn coming down. Do you want to come and pick out what you want? And I'll go and see what I need, and I'll fill my trailer up and pay him for it. Bring it home, but then it all has to be washed. So I can't do that in the wintertime because it has to dry out. So the next sunny day we get, I'm going to go to the big pile I've got in my yard, which hasn't been washed yet, and I scrub it down with a brush by hand with the detergent and kind of a disinfectant, and let it air dry in the sun, and it sits out there for a day or two before I bring it inside for storage. And I can look at the piece and I can tell by looking at it, well, that would fit well with this type of thing or with this one, and I try and match them up so that, you know, maybe all the rough pieces are on one. Some people want one that's as smooth as this table. Do you want me to paint it on plywood for you or what? They just don't want as many holes in it or whatever. So that's why I always try and have a selection of them all with them. And if I've got a new design coming up, then I try and find the right wood for that as well.
To some extent too.
Yeah, make sure there's a variety. But when I fill my trailer up to go to a show, I'll have, you know, half a dozen of these in this size and each size, and the more products I get, the more I have to try and.
It must be quite a difficult process loading up the truck and taking it to every single location every weekend, right?
I set up a 10 by 20 booth typically at a show. It's built to be inside of a tent, so I have a tent that goes over the top, but then I take timbers and barn wood around and I build this barn basically that I'm going to hang all these on the wall of when I get there. And then 2 days or a day later, take it down, put it back in the truck, and then the next weekend off we go. And that's like for my seasonal retail, where we go in and we build a kiosk, and it takes about 4 or 5 hours to completely build and set up a kiosk. That's kind of where that mindset came from, is if I can do that in a mall, I can do this in a field and at a winery or wherever they're doing the show, right? So
it almost calls for like you setting up some sort of like a gallery or something. I think maybe that's what you should consider doing eventually with time, right? Because I mean, instead of having to, you know, go out and like load up the piece every single time, maybe just dedicate a part of your home to that, right? So,
my basement's empty. Maybe I'll do it in the basement.
Yeah, you never know.
You also make like different carved out kind of organic designs, or are they all just kind of square and rectangular?
I have done some. One of the things I make is it's a smaller version of the Canadian flag, but I cut the maple leaf out of actual red barn board from an old red barn, so it'll have the original paint on it, and put that on. Then I did a line for Christmas as well with a Christmas tree on it, and I'll do some for other seasonal stuff as well. Just always trying to have something new like that. And almost every show we go to, someone will ask me, "Oh, have you ever tried this, or could you make that?" And you see a picture of it, and you think, "Oh, I probably could make that."
You gives you a lot more ideas.
That's right.
That way too,
That's right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So with the responses that you've been getting, I mean, obviously when we were talking originally, when I inquired about this piece, you mentioned that you send a lot of stuff to overseas as well. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So the web exposure is really good, and Facebook and Instagram, we got some good following there. But we get a lot of Canadians who are traveling or have relatives in other countries will purchase one to take along to leave there. And plus I also have sent some as well. One of the big sellers is for people who live in another country but have a Canadian tie, is we'll blend a Canadian flag with, say, the Union Jack, or with another flag of another country. And I've probably done 30 different variations of that with 30 different countries. And inevitably that's where those flags end up. So we've got pictures. Someone sent us one from South Africa. They've got it there. Okay. I've sent a few to England. There's one in New Zealand. There's one in Australia. All over the States. People who travel to the States and want a little piece of Canada to be taken with them, then they choose one and take it out.
It's funny how small this world is becoming, right? But I mean, Canada is always going to stay on that, so, you know, and that the good image, right? So I mean, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, in the last 20, 30 years. I mean, with, you know, the things happening in the world. I mean, I don't want to get political and stuff. It's irrelevant to the show, but I don't know. I mean, Canada just always had that perception of just nice, very happy people that always kind of, you know, just always were very happy and pleasing to a lot of other people, right? And they always got along with everybody else. So I mean, it still is that in a lot of sense, but it's just funny how it, you know, how it spreads all across the globe now with everybody, even in some places like South Africa. That's pretty wild.
And that red Canadian maple leaf is iconic, and people recognize that right away. It's not like some other countries' flags where you're not sure which country it is. You know, when you see that flag, that's where it's from. Yeah,
it's funny because I know that there's a huge fascination with the maple leaf or maple tree from, you know, with a lot of people coming from Japan. Yeah, so I know there's like sometimes they'll send even tour buses full of people just to come and take pictures of it when the leaves start changing, right?
That's right. Yeah.
It's pretty incredible because a lot of the times they'll take a vacation. I think they have like a very short vacation, a lot of them. I think it's anywhere between 1 or 2 weeks throughout the year, and they only get that. And then a lot of the times they'll actually take a specific trip to a country where they can just observe nature. So it's,
That's right.
It's kind of wild how they're really just fascinated with a lot of things that seem so simplistic and we take for granted.
That's right.
They like really enjoy it. It's kind of always been a fascination for me that what you stay in touch with the nature, and it's kind of close to me as well because my uncle and my grandfather used to go hunting as well, and I think that's the first time I tried moose meat. What was I think probably the most incredible thing that I've ever had before. So like the whole like hunting aspect of it and like the woods and the wild kind of always been close to me. So soon as I saw the moose, I'm like, it just kind of resonated with me. So I'm like, we must have it. And I'm like, and not only that, like it's different from your typical maple leaf, but yet it's still that it represents Canada, right? Yeah. So it's always been kind of like something that would resonate with me, but at the same time would be something that's can still represent the country. It can still represent the people, but also be an interesting focal point for our show. Yeah. So I want to thank you for allowing me to take this piece from your home.
Yeah, no problem.
And having it.
Yeah.
How do they get how do they find you online? Like where are the
So my website is mjonescreations.ca.
Okay.
And we're also under the same name on Facebook and on Instagram. Right. So that's the best way to get a hold of me, through one of those three sites. And contact me and tell me what you want. I've got on my website, it tells you where you can buy. We're just now listing the shows that we'll be at this summer. My workshop's in Brantford. Sure. It's just a workshop. You've seen it. I don't have a storefront. So if somebody wants to come and choose something out, they need to contact me to make sure we can set up an appointment to be there. I've also got a few stores that carry my product, so I can direct them to one of them if it's nearby them. It's better than coming out. But we're going to try and do, we've got shows in southwestern Ontario and up in Barrie. Kempenfest is a big one. We go to Winona Peach Festival and a couple more further down in the Niagara area this year too. So we're trying to cover all the bases for that.
Tell me more about, I guess, responses from people about this piece, like the actual creations themselves, and what kind of reaction are you getting? Because I'm sure it's kind of hard to translate that because you meet so many people, but at the same time it kind of allows you to network and meet a lot of folks out there.
The one thing we get is people are still really driven towards the rustic element, and there's still a real following for people who want something rustic for their cottage or their home, or they want something that's maybe unique, and that's what we're offering here. Some people are awfully surprised to see it, and it's my intention to make something that looks like it's already 100 years old, but it's new, right? So it's a new creation that looks old. And there's a real process to, and I'm not going to go into it as to how I make it look like this because I don't want to give that away.
Yeah, it's the secret sauce, right?
That's right.
We're not going to talk about that.
That's right. And it's inevitable at any show we go to. Somebody will walk up and they'll be looking and they'll look at the price tag, and one of them will lean over and say, "You could do this, right? You could just do it." And then they go, "Oh yeah, sure, go right ahead." I've seen people try, but
try it out.
It's working good for me now, and I just want to keep the ball rolling and getting bigger. And I don't know if it's going to take over one of my other businesses, so I don't have time, or I'm going to need a helper to help me do this sort of stuff. I really like doing it. Part of the nice part is being able to do it on your own and creating something on your own. That's why we have the name Creations, because it is started as an old piece of wood that someone was going to throw away.
Yes. So do you think it's somehow related to the fact that you were raised on the farm and integrated into the whole rural area aspect of it, you working with your hands and actually creating something? Because I think that a lot of that art is sort of going away because everything's going on the phone now, and everything's becoming very digitalized. So
that's right.
It's very different to have somebody who's involved in 3 different businesses, but yet still has the ability to kind of go out and actually create things by hands, right? I mean, you are with the process the way you've explained it. I mean, if it takes you at least half a year just to even wait for the wood to to be washed off and properly prepped, it's almost like I don't really know other words how to say it, maybe, but it's almost like giving birth to to something else again, right?
Well,
so
I've got
bringing it back to life.
I've got some wood outside that I just can't wait to get washed and ready, because I see it sitting there and I think, oh, that's going to make a nice whatever, right? Yeah. So it's just right. I got to wait till the weather to turn a little bit until we can get into it, and then when summer comes, every nice sunny day, if you drove past my place, you'd see all these boards leaning up against my shop. And that's the one nice thing is I wouldn't be able to do this if I didn't have the space at home to do it.
Right.
Because I cannot see myself driving to a workshop somewhere to spend a couple hours doing something, and then somebody calls me and I've got to go to a meeting for something else. Here I can do it all from my home, And it's, if I need to put another coat of paint on something, it's 2 minutes out my back door and I'm able to do it. While I still listen to the ball game on the radio or whatever, right?
Nice,
so
nice.
So it's handy to be able to do it from my home. And in a small town, we've got a big enough place we can do that in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in a subdivision somewhere, your neighbors may not like you running a saw until 10 o'clock at night or whatever, but yeah, it works out well for me.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Did you I don't know, I mean, I think with any kind of artist, it's almost like you're putting a little piece of your soul into it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel like that? You do that with your art as well, or?
Well, yeah, and every time whenever I make them and they turn out nicely, and you see them when I'm filling the truck up to go to a show, it's like, oh yeah, that's a cool one. Oh yeah, that one's a
It's
good
like
one
you're
too.
making Pinocchios to some extent, right? It's like you're carving out these like little wooden boys.
Yeah, and like I was mentioning earlier before we started it, sometimes, especially through the winter, when I don't have an event to go to and I'm just making inventory in the shop, you get stuck in there in a rut, right? And it's like, oh, just making another one of these, making another one of those, and this, and that. How many of those do I need? And then you go out to a show and see people appreciate your work and talk about things, right? And they all want to know, same questions you're asking, right? And you end up talking to people, and some people I'll pick one up there, or every show we go to, people have to go home and think about it and measure, and then the next week we get sales out of the same thing.
Tell us some interesting stories about those trade shows that you, well, not trade shows, but those fairs that you go to.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, probably like one of the best parts of being in this business is that, like, you're not only creating something on your own, but like also having the experiences meeting people and getting to know their stories as to why they purchased a specific one of your designs.
That's right. Yeah. So a lot of people now are asking for something personalized too, because just an original isn't good enough. They want to have something special on it,
everybody else
something separate. Yeah. So I've done pieces with the family name on them, and let's see, what else was there? A few. One of the better shows is that we go to, I mentioned, was in Barrie, and there's a lot of cottage country people come up there.
Sure,
so had met a guy there, and we made a 4x8 Canadian flag for him to hang on the side of his cottage because he wanted the guy on the other side of the lake to be able to see it. That it was hanging on his cottage. So that was kind of
trying to one up with us.
That's right. Yeah, that was kind of neat. The people that want two flags or sometimes three flags blended into one because their family is made up of different nationalities, and I think that's kind of neat because it gives me a little chance to be a little more artistic than just follow a plain ordinary whatever it was flag. And I think we've got pictures on my website of all those different international flags and some different stuff like that.
Too. I think you do some of the stuff with like sports teams too, right?
Yeah, we've got to watch the licensing there. But
for sure.
But everybody wants something different. Tables and benches and that sort of thing. Everything is very rustic. I do. It's not. It's finished so that it's. I mean, you're not gonna get splinters. You can eat off of everything, but it looks like it was a door when the top was a door. It still looks like a door. I'm not as fussy in a finishing carpenter like some guys are, where they can do something like that. But I have made. Now I sell a live edge cheese board with a wooden knife I've made to cut cheese on, that sort of thing. Just something to round out the category when we're selling at some of these shows and fill up the booth a little bit. You don't want to get stuck into just one thing because people are always looking for something different. So that's where we get that. Yeah.
That's crazy. Going back to what you were saying with personalization, I think that it's really headed towards that, and I think that a lot of I don't know if it's just the fact that we have too much of a consumerism society nowadays. It's everybody's trying to create something or have something that's really personalized, right? It seems like it's really headed in that direction anyway. So it's kind of like the anti-movement against the consumerism, right?
That's right.
In a way that's always sort of funny. Tell us about when you were a kid. Like, what were your aspirations? What did you want to get into?
I had no idea.
Because I mean, you said that you were trying to get into art and stuff, right? Because
But did you always have that entrepreneurial sort of drive? Or?
I don't know. I mean, we had from being on an apple farm growing up. So
instead of lemonade states, it was
sort of.
It was a lot more of an upgraded version.
That's right. Yeah, but we were always, there was always money changing hands, and you always had. It was kind of like a market garden kind of environment, and that was always kind of neat. But I don't know. Growing up was you're just growing up and having fun, and I never really thought a lot about what I wanted to do. Aspirations like now, my kids are supposed to know before high school what they want to do when they're done university. Yeah, it's like, wow, that's pretty heavy. I mean, we didn't have any aspirations like that. It was, I guess I'll go to university,
I think with a lot of high school kids now that they're trying to put them into programs where they go and actually experience working firsthand, which I think is kind of great because I think the market is just so overly saturated with so many people that want to get into jobs, right? And you see like it's not really uncommon to see somebody who has like a master's degree that works as like say like a barista and like at Starbucks, but then it seems like with you a lot of stuff sort of really came naturally. So it's just, I don't know if it's maybe a generational thing maybe to some extent because it was a lot more easy going and like not really as crazy, but I think also coming from maybe a rural area, it was never really like go like it is in maybe cities like Toronto or something. Right? It was a little bit more of like I don't want to say take it easy because I know that a lot of farmers, a lot of rural area, there's a lot of really really hardworking people, right? I mean, there's no doubt about that. It's just I think that it was just the lifestyle itself was a little bit more of a slow pace to some extent in that sense.
There's work to do, you do the work, and when there isn't work to do, then you find work to do.
Yeah, I think probably also because you're probably surrounded by nature too, right? To some extent because you're not that far away. You're not so distancing yourself so much from living in just like a cinder block somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you're isolated. And you go outside and you jump on a subway and go to your job and come back and you're just eating your microwave stuff, right? Dinners and whatever. It's just such a like contrast. I mean, I've spent a lot of summers at the summer homes and with my grandparents, so I've kind of experienced a lot of not being able to go on stuff like this, and stuff like this it seemed like it was somewhere in the very very far distance, like future. It was never like a thing like that. I think that's a lot of the youth are just overly saturated and overly confined to this nowadays, and it's like by that I mean the cell phone, because whoever's not watching the show, they won't really realize what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about the cell phones, and I think it's just taking away so much attention, of people away from, things that matter, families, nature, friends, going out and experiencing things, and just being out, like, being able to get on a bicycle and just go with your friends and ride for 10 kilometers somewhere, right? And just have fun and come back really late at home and you get your butt whipped by your parents and, be really dirty and so, go swimming in the lake somewhere. It's not like that anymore. It's crazy because I'm sure in some countries it might still be like that to some extent, but it's just like we've just kind of lost touch with so much of the natural stuff. It's kind of crazy. Yeah,
and I mean, cell phones are a great tool, but you're right. I mean, we're way too dependent on some of that stuff. However, they're great when I have the app that I can get paid when I go to a show because that, and everybody who looks on my website, I mean, that's awesome and stuff right there.
I'm not disqualifying it as a great tool. I mean, I think especially nowadays you can essentially have your office with you with this at all times. It's not like you ever have to kind of go to your house where you have a wired connection to your old dial-up phone, right? So where you can send them 1 or 2 emails to some potential clients or whatever it might be, right? So it's crazy.
The good old days of the party line, and maybe I'll call somebody and they don't even have an answering machine, right? So you might not hear from your friend for a week.
When your friends just when they got those cordless phones just for the first time, and it seems like something from the future.
That's right.
That's crazy. No, that's why I like the concept of also kind of keeping nature close to you, and the fact that you're giving new life to a lot of things that are sort of already kind of discarded to some extent, right? So it's I like the fact that some businesses are adapting that as a sort of a strategy for them to actually do something with things that are might be rejected by somebody else, and you actually reutilize it and repurpose it. And I think that's very resourceful of people and of us as humans to kind of not just always be in this like crazy consumerism society where we're buying one thing, it breaks in a year, like, whether it be like a tablet or something, right? And you toss it in the garbage and you move on to the next best thing, right? So it's always good to just kind of have that ability to to use your mind for something better and to actually reutilize something and work with your hands and giving something new life. And I think that a lot of that has sort of been going away because of the technological advances, but at the same time it's great to kind of have people like you still staying in touch with the concept of nature and or like bringing back life to something else like that, right? So
and reclaimed is big. People like stuff. They like the fact that you're salvaging it from going to the dump or somewhere else, right? And it's a selling point, but it's also kind of neat that we're able to save some of this old stuff. And it wasn't any good to anybody else in some cases, right?
Fair enough.
So we're able to salvage it and make something out of it. Yeah.
So where do you like to golf in?
Well, I liked golfing in Myrtle Beach.
Did you actually like golf the first time you tried it, or what?
Well,
tell us more about that. Because I know a lot of people they like golf now. They never really liked it in the beginning, right? So
I've never been a serious golfer. When I was working in sales, of course, there's a lot of opportunities to golf. And when you're young and you're athletic, you can be a pretty good golfer. But when you go to a Myrtle Beach course that's really nice and you lose about 40 balls in the first 4 games you play, you realize where you stand. But it was fun.
Might not be as good as I thought it was.
That's right. But it was.
Wait to get up to another level, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe some golf lessons in my spare time coming up. I don't know.
Maybe start another side business with that, right?
Oh, maybe I have to learn it first. Yeah.
That's crazy. No, that's awesome. I don't know. Do you want to plug anything else for your businesses, and how can they find you through real estate?
Royal LePage Brant Realty is the company I work for in Brantford, and we're located on Holiday Drive, 18 Holiday Drive in Brantford. And go on the Royal LePage website and look us up. And MLS, I'm work mostly in Brant County, and selling homes and representing buyers there. It's just as important to have a realtor working for you when you're buying a house as it is for when you're selling, because you need someone on your side to work for you. So that's about at least half my business is with buyers and new buyers. I'm also registered as a seniors sales representative, so someone who can work with seniors and understands the benefits for them of working a certain way and helping them through the transaction, because it's complicated. And if they haven't sold a home in a long time, a lot's changed and there's a lot of pitfalls. So it's good to have somebody who knows what they're doing. So that's one of the training courses I've done with them. Yeah.
Awesome. And which markets do you specifically work in usually?
Yeah, mostly in Brantford and Brant County.
Okay,
so everything from condominiums to farms. I've sold everything in between, and I just like working with people. And everybody has a special interest in their own home and likes to talk about it, and that's what I like, hearing everybody's stories and how they got to where they are and what they want to do next. So,
Tell us a little bit more about the Calendar Club, and what are some of the things that are trending with the stuff that's happening with that? Because I mean, it's an ever-changing business, but it seems like a lot of that stuff is sort of going away because it's...
Well, you know what? Nice thing about a calendar is that everybody needs a new one every year.
That's true.
Right?
So just like with food or something like that, right?
That's right. So we carry calendars for everything you could ever think of. I don't know if you've ever been in one of our stores. We have everything from a kiosk right up to a several thousand square foot store.
I haven't been to the big one like that.
And we have every dog breed you can ever imagine.
No way.
Every type of animal, every hobby, every place. There's something for everyone. So somebody comes into somebody comes into the store near Christmas and they're stuck because Uncle Bob, they don't know what to get him. And well, does he like fly fishing? We have fly fishing. Does he like golf? What kind of humor does he have? All that stuff. We have something for everyone. We also sell games. Board games are getting big again now. It just seems to be the last few years. There's been a lot of new ones and a lot of neat twists on games. So we've got a lot of board games and a lot of toys in the store as well. We don't offer as big a selection as some of the other big retailers because we are just mostly seasonal, but we have a great selection of the most popular stuff, and almost every mall in Canada will have a Calendar Club store in it at some point or another, so you can find them. Calendar Club, I think is it calendarclub.ca, I think you can find us at.
Something like that,
and they'll tell you where all the stores are that are currently open. There's probably somewhere close to 20 open in Canada right now through the summer. One of the ones I look after is in Limeridge Mall in Hamilton, so you can go and visit us there. We're in the top floor near the former Sears store. So that's one of the stores in my portfolio, and it's a good selection. They've got pretty much everything we carry in that space as well.
Awesome. It seems like you're a very rounded guy, and you're very planted into the community, and I love the fact that you're able to set up this life for yourself where you're involved in so many different things, yet you're still able to keep your sanity, kind of, more or less. How do you do that?
I've never been somebody to put all my eggs in one basket.
Yeah, fair enough.
Like if something were to crap out tomorrow,
Definitely
I've got something else.
Especially with everything you have going on.
Something else to carry on with. But it also has to be all something within my control, right? I never overcommit myself, so I've got to be 3 places at the same time. Maybe 2, because sometimes I can do that, but not any more than that.
Strategy roots, right?
You just have to
approach it.
Yeah, and even when people are looking at getting into something else and they may be a little hesitant about it or unsure of a decision to make, And there's that old saying, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence.
Right.
I think it's all relative. It just depends on how green the grass is on your side. Because if you're in a job that's maybe making some good money, but you're just not happy, I could have done a lot of things that make me more money than I'm doing now.
Right.
But I like each one of the things that I'm doing. So it helps that way.
Do you feel like the fact that you bring that love into what it is that you do to some extent helps you as well?
Try to, and it's especially in the retail end of things. It's tough to motivate staff to do the same job you're doing if they don't have the same passion or love for it, right?
Course,
Especially in a mall where some days it's not very busy and you're just kind of standing around waiting for people to come in, trying not to talk on your phone, and so there's some challenges with that too. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I love to think I think that you're a really fascinating person, and I love the fact, like I was saying, you're very involved with your community. You're doing a lot of different things, and you're definitely keeping it interesting for yourself, because it seems like you never really have a dull moment in your life, and the fact that you're able to do stuff like this is really awesome, because it's definitely helping our show, and I think that it was sort of a blessing to run into you, because we love to meet fascinating people, and we love to meet interesting people, and we love to talk to them about their stories and how it's benefited them in terms of them growing as a person, them growing as a business. What sort of advice would you give to yourself, if you were 20 years old right now, with all the experiences that you've had?
Don't
so
do it.
far?
Don't
do it. You heard it here first. Don't do it.
When I was 20, I don't know.
Or 25-year-old. I don't know.
Just be
what would you be with the more sensible version of yourself?
Be prepared for the plan to change.
Right.
I think, right? I have so many friends I went to university with who are not doing anything like what they did in university. They thought they had it all figured out, and they're completely something different, and they love what they do. So, I just think you got to be ready for anything. It's hard to do, but yeah.
What's the mental approach to that? You just do it kind of thing, or what?
Keep an open mind and don't get caught up with tunnel vision. That's all. There's opportunities everywhere, and sometimes you got to take a chance and just be prepared.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, guys.
Pleasure talking to you.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. And stay tuned. We'll have way more different shows, and we'll try to bring in more different guests. We'll try to bring more influencers. But we'd like to thank Matt for coming in today. I'd like to thank him for this piece right here once again. You've been awesome, and thanks for coming today.
Thanks again. Yep.
Bye-bye.